And the next episode of history's biggest budget television series has arrived, and boy was I ready for it. I was ready for it because, despite some of its inherent flaws, I have always been a massive MCU fan, as well as a huge comic book fan and full-on lover of origin story films. And so, how does Captain Marvel stack up against the other episodes? Well, let's first focus on the positive. First off, there were indeed moments where I absolutely understood Marvel Studios' reasoning behind hiring co-directors Anna Boden and Ryan Fleck, filmmakers who, up until now, had just directed television and worked on smaller indie dramas like Half Nelson and Mississippi Grind. And those moments really were the small ones. Scenes where the film was really able to slow down and the characters able to just be. Beats of believable breath, flashes of genuine chemistry. I could just see, in those times, that those two filmmakers really knew how to tell a story and understood how to pull good performances out of their actors. And I certainly have to give credit to these screenwriters for the success of those smaller moments as well, as their dialogue and scene structure were integral in helping the characters' chemistry spark and the overall tone click. A scene like the one between Nick Fury and Carol Danvers, where they got to know one another in a bar, which unfortunately has been rather spoiled in the trailers, was still among my favorites of these smaller, quieter moments. The film, the characters, the style, the tone, all of it just came to life, and I just found myself smiling and enjoying the experience. And while we're talking about those characters, we might as well talk about the actors that played them in this film. Sam Jackson in particular seemed to be having markedly more fun with Nick Fury in this film than he has in quite a while in the MCU. I've always got the impression that the actor is one who really likes a challenge and being given something fresh to play, and, well, Fury just really hasn't been given that much freshness in the last few entries. Here, though, not only did Jackson get to play the character almost 30 years younger, he was written with that much more spunk and naivete. And speaking of spunk, Brie Larson has got that specific element down to a T. The character that she was given to play was almost always full of confidence, just brimming with sassy one-liners and ever overflowing with cool smirks, and Miss Larson proved that she could definitely pull those off. And of course, if you've seen any of the actress's other work, you know that she can also pull off really heartfelt, tearful emotion as well. And though in Captain Marvel, the moments where she was asked to go there were few and far between, for the most part, when Miss Larson was asked to go there, she went there. Returning to the directors and their style for a moment, visually speaking, by far my favorite scenes were the ones that took place at this beautiful farmhouse. There was one great scene in particular where Carol is having this heartfelt conversation with a number of other characters, which was shot right at twilight, that was absolutely gorgeous. It was so distinct from so much of the rest of the MCU, and so visually befitting this specific narrative. Like I mentioned up at top, 9 out of 10 times my favorite superhero films are the origin stories. Yes, I am the crazy guy that sometimes, not always, but sometimes prefers Batman Begins over The Dark Knight. Sometimes. Anyways, one of the reasons for this is they so often contain one of the lowest points in a hero's journey. A time when the character finds him or herself at the bottom of their darkest pit, and those moments are always my favorite moments. Tony Stark being held captive in a terrorist's cave, forced to construct one of his own weapons to be used by the enemy. Thor, robbed of his powers, forced to try and to fail at lifting his mighty hammer. Steve Rogers, before being injected with a super serum, forced to endure beatdown after beatdown. Wonder Woman, stripped of her hope, forced to realize that mankind may indeed be corrupt at their core. These are my favorite moments. Not only do they allow me to connect and to relate to these superheroes, they allow their inevitable rise to even greater power to feel so much more satisfying when it happens. And unfortunately, Captain Marvel's origin story was notably lacking in this department. Yes, there were snippets, these tiny pieces which maybe were just cut down in the edit, where Carol was getting put down by people throughout her life, but they were never settled into or fully experienced by us, the audience, as to provide the impact that we so desperately needed. Because, like I was just saying, if the filmmakers really wanted us to genuinely feel this character's rise to strength and power, we needed to better understand the pit from out of which she climbed to get there. And speaking of elements that just desperately needed more clarification, there was this character in the film called the Supreme Intelligence who really just miffed me. I'm sure I would have understood this more had I read more comic books, but looking only at the film, I really was left in the dark. It seemed like she was meant to be this Kree higher intelligence or even deity, but it really wasn't explored or explained enough to really make that much sense to me, and it was consequently robbed of any real power, especially in the moment where it needed to demonstrate it most. Also, these specific plot points and flashbacks that revealed how Captain Marvel got her powers, yes, they did make sense on some level, but they also left so many dangling elements that just didn't make sense and didn't really add up. Circling back around to Brie Larson, she really is, in so many films, the real deal. She is absolutely phenomenal in films like Short Term 12 and, of course, The Room, but in Captain Marvel, in so many scenes, she reminded me of another great actress that just seemed to choke when she got thrown into a big-budget blockbuster, that being Natalie Portman in the Star Wars prequels. And even while I blame most of this not on Brie, but on the writers and directors, she did indeed have a number of genuinely cringeworthy moments. In the long run, though, this doesn't concern me too much, just because I believe that with a better script and better direction, Brie Larson can give us the version of this character who is much more believable and relatable. And so, when it was all said and done, Captain Marvel wasn't horrible and it wasn't great. It was just a movie that happened, and did so with very little personality or style, but still did a serviceable job establishing a character whom I'm very excited to see interact with the rest of the Avengers in Endgame. And for all these reasons, I will give the film a 3 out of 5. I would still love to know what you guys thought of the film, though, so definitely comment below and let me know. And per usual, whenever I review a Marvel film, I am curious if you could list for me your top 5 Marvel films. That would be a lot of fun. If you're interested in seeing my entire list, pop on over to Letterboxd and you'll be able to find it over there. Finally, please do subscribe. I'm going to continue to review films and television on this channel, and I would love for you to stay up to date on all of those things. But for now, I'm Chris Hartwell. This is The Heartbeat. Thank you for joining me.